Vishal, over to you.
Thank you, Vidya. Hello, everyone. Good evening. And I think most of us are here, so it's a good evening for all of us. So let me start and share my screen. So today I'm not having any slides because the topic is such that it just directly needs a hands-on. So we'll start directly with the hands-on. Before I start, I think all of us would have seen the orchestrator, or if they have not seen, I'll quickly spend just a minute uh, for just giving a brief intro. So the orchestrator, UiPath Orchestrator is the place where you can manage all your bots, processes, and everything, right? So it's your one-stop solution for all your needs. And once you log into the orchestrator, this is the homepage. And what you will be seeing is from this hamburger menu, you'll have different options, and this is what the orchestrator will option will be. So you can click on that and this will open up the orchestrator page. So as it says UiPath Orchestrator, and this URL right on top, right till here. This is very important because this is the URL which you'll use in the assistant. So basically there are two entities involved here. One is the orchestrator, which you should be aware, which we are going to talk about. And then you have the UiPath assistant. So assistant is the software which is installed locally onto your machines and it is connecting to the orchestrator. So whenever you install the UiPath, that time you will be also installing the assistant. So let me open the assistant as well because it's important. So if you see here, this is the assistant. So once you want to connect to the orchestrator, then you'll have to give this URL here. So this is the URL which is right here, till/orchestrator. That is the URL you'll need. And this is the orchestrator URL which you'll need to connect to the cloud orchestrator. We'll see why we use this and what is this machine key and things like that. Because this is the common problem people face when they start running the automation. You might do the development of the process, but how do you make it running in the orchestrator? That is important, right? So we'll see that as well. So this is the URL of the which is right on the top of the orchestrator. And now in the orchestrator, if you see, we have something known as a tenant, and then we have certain options here on the right side. So tenant is your top level, you can say partition. If you kind of compare it with your local system, you have a C drive partition, right? Similarly, you might have a separate partition for D drive or other drives. So by default, there'll be a default tenant. So let's come here. When you start on any orchestrator, you'll have a single tenant, which is the default tenant, which is given. This is the one, right? But you might want to add additional tenants. So normally how people use it is, suppose you have the dev environment, then you have the QA environment and production environment. You don't need separate, you'll manage all of them through this single URL, right? So you might have a dev tenant, then you might have a UAT tenant, and then you might have a prod tenant. And how you can do it is very simple. If you come to tenants, this is the default tenant. But if you want to add more tenants, so I can just click on that plus option there. I can give the name, say UAT tenant. By default, it will ask for a region. So I'll say now we have multiple regions, right? So earlier it was just the Europe region. So now you can select the region. I think India is right here below, I think. Yeah. And then you can also have a color scheme selected. So how this is helpful is, suppose you create a prod tenant and because you have multiple tenants, by mistake, you don't want to do any changes in the production. So visually also you want to know. So suppose I have a UAT tenant and I want to give a color scheme here. So right on top, that banner will show in a this color so that I know that this is my separate environment and I don't need to do I don't do mistakes in that tenant by mistake. Okay. And then I can add services. This I can add later as well, but by default, if I want to add services, I can do from here, and then I can do the license allocation. So license allocation by default, you will have certain license, and suppose you have two uh, robot licenses, and suppose you want to assign one robot license in your dev tenant, and you want to assign another license in the second tenant, and so on. So that all you can do. Currently, I would assign all my licenses on the default tenant. That's why there's nothing available. So if I try to add here, it'll not work because I'm already utilizing all my tenants. So I need to reduce the license from the other tenant and then do it, or otherwise, for just for demo, we are just creating a tenant, and from here I am creating a new tenant. So if you see, I created a color coding. This is a small thing, but it's important. So let it provision. We'll see that color coding also. Okay, so this is the tenant. So if you have any questions, feel free to stop me uh, in the chat, or you can speak up as well. But this is the tenant that we have seen. Okay, so let's go back. All right, so now this is the home. So here you have processes, assets, queues, triggers, users, and machines. So in order to run the automation, what is required? We need the process. The automation will sit under the process. So when you create any automation, you will create an automation either using Studio Web, like what I had shown yesterday, or you might use a Studio Desktop, right? The UiPath Studio. You might use a UiPath Studio and then deploy it. So when you deploy any process, so let me open any sample, say hello world process. Okay. So we are not going more into development, but we are trying to understand the deployment and what are the different options and things like that. Okay. So when you are using the studio, first and foremost, what you have to make sure is you are connected to the right environment. So this panel once again, yeah. Okay. So if you see here on my screen, I just have a simple automation, but what I want to show is when I'm connected to the orchestrator, I will ideally be seeing those folders which I have created here. So now we first discussed about the tenant. Second thing is folders. So how is folders and tenants different? So suppose it's very much similar to how you can see in our local system, right? You have a C drive, but within the C drive, you will create different folders depending on your work, right? Similarly, in UiPath as well, you will have the tenant. Within the tenant, you will have multiple folders. Okay. And there's your own workspace, your own private area, you can say, which will be your account's workspace. So suppose if you see here on the bottom of my screen, one is my corporate account workspace because I created the account using my corporate account. And then I have a shared folder and a demo folder. Yeah. So basically two folders you will see by default. Let's go back here. So shared will be there by default and my workspace will also be there by default. What is the difference between my workspace, shared, and the other new folders that you'll create? My workspace is something where suppose you're doing some development and you want to test it on the orchestrator, but you don't want to make it public. You just want to test it yourself, right? So you will do it on the my workspace. So anything that you deploy on a my workspace, it's automatically added in the process. So let me come here. I deployed this. So for now, just for a second, I'll remove this automation. Okay. So let's do a first deployment on my workspace folder. So I'm coming here. So deployment or publishing is very simple, as we know. If we come here, if we click on publish on the top right, the last option, publish. My package name will be my project name. The every time I publish, it will increment the version. So I have kind of done some deployments earlier, so that's why it's incrementing the version. If I have not done any changes, or if I know that I want to use the old version, I can use that as well. But for now, I'm just changing this. And then before I do that, one thing I have to notice here is I'm using my workspace. See, I selected this. Okay. So this particular thing is important. I'm saying that I want to deploy onto my workspace. So I've selected this. Let's go back again. So I click on publish. The package name is here. And then because I've taken my workspace, it's automatically saying personal workspace feed. Okay. So I'll do next and I'll do publish. So this is the simplest way to publish. What will happen is directly it will create a process here with that name. So let's just do a refresh here. So see, it's coming here. Whereas in the other option, if I do a deployment onto other, so this is the simplest way and the process is deployed and I should be able to run it. The other option is if I create separate folders. So before I deploy into separate folders, let's talk about how we first create folders. So if I go to the tenant and there's this option of folders, let's create another folder and then try to deploy over there. So come to folders here and there's a manage folders option. So from here, you can create a new folder. So I'll say this student folder. And then package, process package. So this two options here is also important. So tenant package feed is something which is common across. Okay. So it is something if you deploy and I want it to be available across. So suppose I am having a library which I want to use everywhere. So then I would normally do a tenant package feed. But if I want to deploy something specific to a folder, I'll use this option because that I don't want it to be visible across all the folders. So normally in an enterprise environment, we will use this option because I might have automations pertaining to payroll. I might have automations pertaining to HR and so on. So I don't want my HR automations to be visible by the payroll team and so on. So that's why I'll create a folder specific to my say HR automations and I'll deploy specific to this. For the demo, currently I'm creating a student folder and I'm saying create a new package feed for this folder. I'll click on create. So now this student folder is created. Now so this is just I've created the folder. It is visible right here as well. If I go to my studio, and if I see here, currently it's not visible. So what I have to do is come here and do a refresh, just the icon next to it. I've just clicked on refresh. And now if I see here, that folder is coming. So I then select student folder. And now if I deploy onto the student folder, I will do next. It's automatically, it knows based on what I've selected here, it knows that I want to deploy on the student folder. So that's why it's saying orchestrator student feed. Earlier, if you remember, it was personal workspace feed. Okay, and if I had selected the tenant level, then it would have taken the tenant feed. So it's taking student feed. Do next, publish. So now the difference is this is a common folder. It will be visible. We'll come to the permissions, but in this case, it's not my personal workspace feed. Okay. So now if I come here and if I click on processes, see, it's not directly visible. So now if I want to make it visible, what I have to do is I have to explicitly add the process. So I have to do an add process. That package which I have deployed would have been deployed here. So if I come to student and come to folder packages, see this is the package which I just deployed. So it's available here. But in order to run it, it has to be part of the process. So I do add process and I'll select the folder, the package which I deployed. So in this case, the hello world, the version which I had deployed, it's there here. Okay. And entry point for all automations is main.xaml as we discussed. So do next, next. Here you can have a display name which is different from what is the process name. So if you want, you can give another name. Oops, I thought I give, but I just click next. But anyways, from here I can give that name and that's it. I can add trigger, I can start the automation and things like that. For now, we'll just hold on to that. And this is how it is added. So this is how the automation is deployed onto the tenant. And what we did is we use both the personal and the folder level feed. Now, why we need this folder? I was saying that we need the permissions and things. So how do we control that? Okay, so let's come back to here. So in the tenant folders, I created a student folder. So by default, whoever has created, so myself, I created the folder, that person has access to the folder. Because I created it, my name is directly populating here. But that's not how ideally it will be used, right? I want this to be used by a team or a group. So then there's this option of assign account or group or external app. So I'll click on this and then I can search for specific users or specific groups which I want them, which the group needs access, right? So I can search for that group and assign access to them particular. So in that case, I need to create a group first. Currently, I don't think I have a group, but basically from here, I can assign a group and then that entire group will have access. So how that is useful is instead of assigning individual users, I can create a group. How do I create a group? Let's see that briefly. If I go to admin, I'm sorry, group coming here, accounts and groups. So local groups, add a group. I can give a name. And here I can add any people whom I want to be, part of this thing, a group. So I'm adding suppose my name. Okay. So that group should get created. Currently that group is just having me, but I can add multiple people. And if I come back and refresh student group. So currently it's showing me, but I can add more members. There was also an option to add Excel of a sheet of users together. I think that option I'm not seeing here, but you can add multiple people as well together. Okay. So yeah, coming back to the folders now. So let's go back to orchestrator. Okay. Rajashekar, I'll take your question in a minute. So students, sorry. Yeah. So we were at the tenant folder level, student. From here, I can basically assign a account group. Account means an individual account. A group means a group of people like we created, and an app as well. So I think tomorrow you'll have an app session. You can create apps within UiPath, and you want to give access to particular app and only. So in that case, on this folder, you will create the app and you will give an access specific to that. So that's why there's an app as well. So there are two things here. One is the user level access and there is a machine. So whenever you create an automation, it will be running on a particular machine. Okay. So again, for machine, there are two options. You might have a cloud VM. Suppose you are working on on an automation which you have created from the studio web, right? Then you will have a cloud VM which UiPath is providing. The cloud VM versus local VM, what is the difference is cloud VM is kind of spinned up at runtime. It is managed, and then once the process is completed, it is done. But in many cases, you might have long running automations, or you might want to use a separate automation, separate machine altogether. In that case, you'll have to create a machine here and assign that machine to this folder. So for the automation, what are the three things required? You need obviously the automation, you need the user, and you need a machine, and you need a proper license to be allotted to the machine. And this machine and user combination is very important. Unless that is set up properly, you will not be able to run the automation. So that is important. So we'll create a machine and do that as well. I'll first quickly give a brief overview and we'll come back to this step. And I'll take a question also. The same package. So Rajashekhar's question is, can you share more details about using same package to run it on multiple machines? So machines, so package meaning, Rajashekhar, if I understand, you are saying that you want to run an automation into multiple machines. So machines, so when we come to machines, we'll talk about it, or I can explain it. So package is something which is the automation which I have deployed is the package. Okay. So now if I want to run it into multiple machines, what I have to do is I have to create something known as a machine template. So let's go to the machines and we'll take that as well. So when you come to the machines, I click just to show you, I clicked on manage machines in this folder because I want to check on this machine. So here, when you click on add machine, you have a machine template. You have this elastic robot pool, cloud robot VM, and cloud robot serverless. Okay. So machine template is something where you want to create a similar kind of machine and you want to add multiple machines. So you create a simple template. Okay. And then machine template may have one or more machines added. Okay. So currently we are using suppose my machine, but you might have suppose additional machines which you want to add in the machine template that you can do. The other three are all cloud concepts. So Elastic Robot Pool is like a pool of resources, pool of machines, and at runtime, it will take the machine from the pool and then use it. Cloud Robot VM and serverless, the difference is Cloud Robot VM is managed by UiPath. The VM you are having, both of these are cloud. Only difference is VM you have certain level of management, whereas in serverless you don't need to do any management. It's automatically handled. That's the only difference. So let me show you the machine template. If I click on machine template, you have to give a template name. So you might say student template. Okay. And here is where you will give the license. Okay. So suppose currently if I have two unattended and testing licenses. So unattended, as we know, is something where it will be running in an unattended fashion. So in the sense that at runtime, suppose I have a time-based trigger. I say that my automation needs to run at say 6:30 p.m. every day. At 6:30 p.m., this orchestrator will trigger. It will log into your particular VM. How will it log in is basically you will give the credentials for that machine and it will log in, it will run the automation and come out. So at runtime, it will directly run through unattended license. Whereas in case of testing license, you have to be connected and you can utilize it for the testing. So I create a suppose student template. I assign it one unattended license, one testing license. Okay. And I say provision. Okay. So now what happens is it gives me a client ID and a client secret. So it's basically a machine key and a machine secret. So now why this is important is whenever you want to have VMs or machines part of this uh, machine template, what you simply need to do is go to the assistant and use this machine key in order to connect to this template. So let's do that. And if you have any doubts, you can ask me, but I'll show you quickly. So let me disconnect from here. Okay. So I want to use the new template and I want to use this machine key. So what first I have to do is click on copy. Okay. Come to the assistant. Okay. My orchestrator URL is the same. I think, no, not the automation. It was DevCon. I'll copy that URL from top before first I'll paste the key because otherwise this thing will go. So now I'll copy this. Okay. This is my machine key and I'll say connect. Okay. So right now it's connected here because it got the license. Sometimes you might say it might show as unconnected or with a yellow thing. In that case, you have to properly check your license. Okay, have you alerted the license here? And usually that's the issues where you will face that it might not get connected. So see, I was able to connect this machine, and now if you see, my one production license is used here. I had created another machine as well. There are basically two production licenses that I had. One I'm using in this template, another I'm using for this template. So your license is always tied to your machine. Okay. And when you run your automation, that machine and the user needs to be allotted to that folder. Then only you will be able to run the automation. Okay. So we'll run the automation, but this is an important thing which you have to remember that your license is tied to your machine. Okay. Let's oops, sorry, stay on page. I have to update. Okay. So now if I go to the tenant and I can quickly see here, go to the license and you can see here one of two licenses is being utilized because I just connected just few minutes back, right? So that's why it's saying one of two runtime. So suppose I had a separate machine and there again I connect using that template, then it will show two of two connected. So always you can, whenever you face any issues or you want to see if there is a problem, you should come to the tenant license and see if you are overutilizing or underutilizing or if your license is occupied or not. You can check from your tenant license. Okay. So, okay. So yeah, so we were at the tenant folders and what I did is I came to student. I myself have my user. Ideally, when you are running in an unattended fashion, you will create a robot account. You will create a robot account as well. For now, I have my account and come to machine and you have to, because I created this machine template from this folder, directly assign the template. It is assigned this template to this folder. Suppose the another way to create is if I come here, tenant machines, add machine template, then I would have to, if I create a separate template here, suppose ABC something, just for testing, close, and just for demo I'm showing. So tenant, folders, student. So see that template will not come. Then I have to look for that folder template. So this is the one, right? I have to look for that and assign it directly. Yeah. So anyways, we are not utilizing this, just FYI. If I'm creating the machine template from this folder, then it will automatically assign it. So if it is getting little complicated, let me know. But once you do this, you'll come to know. Or if you are in front of the orchestrator, you can try it as well. But let's quickly give an overview first. Okay, so now let's go to the other tabs which are here and which are important. So suppose monitoring tab, this will show you the entire status of how the processes are, what are running, what is terminated. You will get a job history here. This gives you a visual clue of how much processes jobs were successful. Okay, so before even we come to the jobs, the what is the difference between process and job? Let's see that first. So suppose we created this we added this hello world process, right? So this is the process where we just deployed the automation. But if you go to the jobs, it's empty. So jobs is the runtime instance of the automation. So if I run the automation, so I'll say I'll run it. How do I run it? How do I run the automation? Very simple. I'll come here, click on this start a job option. Currently, I have the license, so automatically it's taken it and it is using uh, currently see, yeah, good. So because it's a new machine template I used, currently there's no robot account, so it's empty. So it will not be able to run. So this is a good problem to solve. Let's solve it at runtime. So first time when you do the setup, this is what you'll face. So what happened is, see, we created a new folder. Just to revise again, we created a new folder, student. We created a machine template here. When we went to tenant, we went to the folders and we came to student and my user was there and we created the machine template. But for my user, do I have the account here? Do I have the license here? Do I have the robot account license? No. That's why it is a problem. So suppose I come here and I click on start. I have one runtime, but there is no user robot account. So what I have to do is click plus here and look for suppose for my user. But why it is not working is because my account does not have the proper license. So let me show you how to do it. Let's do it. Let's solve the problem. So go to admin and go to default tenant, manage access. Sorry, go to the tenant, go to the accounts and groups, and we'll create a robot account. So see, what is the difference between a user account and robot account? User accounts are our accounts which are actual users. Okay. Robot account are not actual users. They are kind of virtual accounts. They don't need, they are not tied to a particular user, but that's how the automation will be using. That is the account the automation will be using to run your automation. I mean, UiPath will be using to run your automation. So what we will do is we'll create a robot account. I might use a user account as well. Both options are there. But in an ideal scenario, I should be using a robot account because that is where I will be running the automation through an unattended setup. So let's create a robot account. So come to basically I went to admin. I came to the tenant. I went to the organization level. This is my organization, and I came to robot account. So let me create an add robot account. So I'll create an account. But no need to give anything here. Just click on add. Okay. Go to organization. That's fine. So now what has happened is I've created a robot account. Okay. So if I go to here, I have this demo to robot. So how I'll utilize this robot account? Let's see. So I'll come back here to orchestrator. Okay. Tenant. So sorry, first I'll go to manage access. Okay. From tenant, I went to manage access and I'll go to robot account and assign robot account. So first time I have to look for that my account. So first demo 2. So demo 2 account. Okay. So here what I have to do is I have to take this account and I will say I have to use Windows credentials. So why I'm doing this is, see, when this robot will be used, right, it needs to log into the machine in order to run any automation. So how will it know what account credentials it has to use? So I'm explicitly giving them my Windows credentials. At runtime, what will happen is this robot account will be used, it will log into the machine using the window credentials. So basically, ideally, we create separate window credentials for the robot account. For the demo, I'll just use my credentials, and that is the credentials it will use to run the automation in my account, in my machine. Okay. But before I do that, I had actually used this credentials in the separate account as well. So let me first remove that. If I come here, edit. So I'll update this. Otherwise, what will happen is it will say that you're already using these credentials in a separate robot. So let's do it once more. So assign robot account. Then I'll click on demo 2. Okay. And then instead of predefined credentials, I'm saying custom Windows credentials. Here, what you have to give is your domain and username. So how do you get your domain and username? Open your DOS prompt and type who am I. Okay. So that will give you the proper username which you are using in your system. I mean, ideally you'll know that, but just to make sure, copy. So this is my domain / username. And here I have to give my Windows credentials through which I'm logging into my machine. I've given my Windows credentials and I'm clicking on assign. Okay. So now I have this demo to robot account. Okay. So what I've done is first we created a machine template. Then we assigned that machine template to the folder. Then we created a separate robot account and we gave Windows credential to the robot. So this 4 steps we have done. Now what we'll do is again go to the tenant folders, student, and I will assign this robot account to this folder. So how do I assign that? Currently, I just have my user. Instead of that, what I'll do is click on this assign account and now look for that separate account. So demo to robot. Okay. Then say automation user is fine. I need to give some roles. I'll be an automation user and I click on assign. And basically it will say that you want to assign in the tenant as well. Yes, so you do that as well. So now I have this demo to robot account assigned to this folder. Okay, so my automation is deployed in this folder. I have a robot account assigned and I also have a machine template assigned to this. So my 3 things which I need to take care of should be sorted. I have a folder, I have a robot account assigned here, and I have a machine assigned here, and that machine is connected on my assistant. So let's now go back to student folder, come to automation and click here. So now let's see if I get the account. See, now my account is there. And here, if you see, this is my domain username password, which I had used. So this is the one which I just set up on this demo to robot. So by default, when you select this, it will come to know, you can even visually see here that I'm ideally going to run this using this account. So because I have one account, I don't need to worry. If I have multiple accounts, it might show multiple. So basically I'm using my credentials here. Again, here I'm using this template. And suppose this template currently has only one machine connected. That is my machine. But suppose in assistant I had multiple machines connected, then I could have selected a particular machine. How this is useful is, suppose this is important, just take a note here. So basically what will happen is, how is machine template useful? So suppose in my machine template I have 3 accounts, 3 machines. Okay. So let me click on Excel. I'll quickly show you something. Okay. Okay. So suppose in my machine template, this is an important concept you have to remember. So I have 3 machines connected, machine 1, machine 2, machine 3. Okay. Now, provided I have the required license. So suppose I have given like 1 license for each machine. So basically I should have 3 total licenses, right? And suppose 1 license is allotted here, 1 license is allotted here, and so on. Now what happens at runtime? Suppose there is this is occupied. Suppose I have 2 automations coming together, and at 6 p.m. I have 3 automations. Suppose let's take example 3 automations coming together. This guy is occupied and these 2 are free. Okay, and I have this machine 2 and machine 3 also connected to this machine template. So what will happen is, automatically UiPath will take the next available machine, which is here. So if 2 and 3 are available, and if they are connected using that, then it will take. So your automation might run on this machine, 2, or it might run on 3. So suppose that is the other option. Suppose 2 is also occupied. Then the only remaining machine is machine 3, right? So your automation will directly take the machine 3 because that is the free machine here. But suppose this is also occupied. That means all 3 are occupied. What will happen is then it will go into the pending state. And whichever of these 3 guys becomes free first, that machine will take the automation to run. Are you getting it? So this machine is useful, machine template is useful in that manner. For the demo, you'll not be able to visualize because we are just using one host machine and that's what is being used. But ideally, this is the concept for the machine template. If you have multiple automations running, and if you have machine template configured and you want to kind of load balance or you want to balance, you might have multiple machines, and provided you have the license, it will automatically distribute your automation accordingly. So that's how it will work. Okay, so let's start. Any questions on this? I'm just anyway, running the process is not important, but basically this was important. So yeah, so basically it's a hello world, so it's just clicking that. So once you run the automations, you can just click on logs and see how things are. If there are any issues, you can check in the logs. You can do some filtrations on the top. If you have multiple processes, you can do some filtrations and you can add default columns. By default, it adds some columns. You want to add certain other columns you can add. I think by default, there's that start date, end date also you can add here. That's another option you can add, I think. Yeah, absolute time. See, suppose I want to know the actual absolute time, then that's what is added here. Okay. By default, it's not. It's just some visual things, not that important, but yeah, whatever. Okay. Another thing is this monitoring. Once your process is running, you can monitor it here. Suppose you have multiple processes running, you can see it here. Then you have the concept of queues. Queue, it's like you can have a separate data structure where you can suppose you okay, yeah. Before I explain queue, you can explain. I tell you one more thing. So suppose add process. So suppose what we did is we have taken hello world process, right? So next, we by default this priority will be job, but I want to show you one more thing. Sorry, medium. But okay, yeah. Let's come to triggers. So you have, how can you run the automation? Currently, we are running it from the process, but you have multiple options. You have time trigger, you have queue trigger, event trigger, and API triggers. So time trigger is something which is simple. You specify that you want to run your automation every hour, suppose. So you can say that every 1 hour you want to run, or you want to run every day at specified time. You can even have cron expression. You want to run it weekly. Suppose I want to run it Monday and Thursday only. So I can do it that way. So you have multiple options here. Then you can have in advance if you give this is a cron expression. So here cron expression is like you have specific needs. You want to run it at some time, say third hour, midnight 3 a.m. At only on Thursdays and things like that. You want advanced expression. You can get a cron expression. You can take Google's help or you can build a cron expression. That's how you can do. So this is a time trigger. Okay, you can do that. Another thing is queue trigger. So queue trigger means what will happen is, let me show you the queue first and then we'll talk about queue trigger. So I think I had created a queue, but let me. So queue is a data structure where you'll temporarily hold the data. Okay. So what you need to do is you need to click on add queue and let's create one queue, create new queue. And suppose as a student, you need to give a data structure for the queue. So I think I had created one just before this. Yeah, student is. Notepad is a little bit heavy, so it's taking a bit. But basically, you have to give a JSON schema for your queue. So what will happen is you specify that this is my data structure for my items in the queue. Okay. Without that data structure, it will not know that what you are going to store. Let me directly open it in 1 second in Notepad. The Notepad plus plus is taking time. Wow, Notepad plus plus is hanging, I guess. Let me kill this. I want to directly show you the schema. Close the program. Never mind. I'll directly open it in Notepad rather than Notepad plus plus. Open it in Notepad. Okay, yeah. So this is my data structure. Okay. So what I have to give is I have to give this is the in JSON format. So in JSON format, what we are saying is I specify I have to give some schema. So some URL I have to give. You can change this if you need. I'm saying type as object because it's a custom schema. So it's not a primitive data type, right? So I'm creating a separate data structure. So what I'm saying is I want to have a roll number, name, and so on. I might add other elements. So first, what I'm doing is I need to specify this structure. I have to create this kind of JSON file. Okay. And this JSON file I have to upload as part of my JSON schema, queue schema. So let me go back to my orchestrator. Okay. Yeah. So browse student JSON. Okay. And then you have certain other options like how long you want to keep the data. And once you add the data into the queues, you can specify, but by default, it's like 30 days and things like that. It's okay. So click on add. Okay. So now see, now I've created a queue, and what will happen is my automation might put some data for this as long as it follows my schema. Like I have the roll number, I have defined a schema, right? A roll number and a name. So that schema has to be followed. And then I can use that data. Suppose how site, but I don't know how long that process one is going to take. Okay, suppose it is going to take suppose it might take 10 minutes or it might take 1 hour. Okay. So I don't know how long that process is going to take. So and my process two is dependent on the data from process one. Okay. So let's again, I hope you got it, but let's go again, go to the Excel. So I have process one and I have process two. So same thing, I'm just visually showing you, writing it. So suppose this might take 10 minutes, but this might take, or it might take 60 minutes. Okay. Suppose my website is slow, it might take 60 minutes. So this is downloading some data into an Excel or it's downloading, suppose, invoice related information or whatever. It is downloading some information. This guy process 2 is going to utilize this data, but this guy can only start once this data is available. Okay. And I cannot give a time-based trigger saying that run this automation after 10 minutes of this. So what I will ideally do is how my design will be is my process one will run, and at the end of my process, I'll put data into a queue. Okay. So once my automation process one is completed, I'll put the data in a queue, and process two can be a queue-based trigger. So what process two being a queue-based trigger means, as soon as the data lands in my queue, then I want to trigger this process. So instead of using the time-based trigger, I can use this queue and I can use a queue-based trigger. So there are other options as well, like might write into a file or things like that, but this is the easiest way to do. That's how you can utilize the queue. And with queue, the advantage is that you can track it, you can reprocess it and things like that. So I created, suppose, this queue, so I can see that how many items have been consumed, how much time it took to consume, how many were successful, how many were failed, and so on. So queue is very important concept in that case. Okay. Assets, in interest of time, I'll move a little quickly. Assets are something you would have seen, but you can create mainly four types of, oh, now we have 5 types of basically values. So you can create, suppose, certain common values which you want to keep at the asset level. So your automations might use values from the assets. normally, mostly it's used for credentials, storing credentials, or you might have certain common values you want to keep here. Why would you keep here is, suppose you want to give a controlled manner in which the user can change it later. So instead of hard coding the value in your automation, you might give it in an asset. So I might say, suppose just for you to, suppose I'll say my principal name, right? Today I have principal A, tomorrow it might change to B. So right, I don't need to change everywhere in the automation. I'll just change the value here so that my automation will automatically get the updated value. Or if my credential is normally used for any logging into the websites, so I might give my credentials here instead of hard coding, which is not a good practice, and I'll take it from the asset here. So that's why I'll use the asset. Okay. Business rules is new, so we'll skip that. It's very new. Like if you have certain rules which you want to add, that you can add, and your automation can use these rules here. Storage buckets is important. So this is all on cloud, right? UiPath is hosted on Azure. So if you want to store certain data into a storage bucket, which is the cloud storage, you can use here. You can click on add storage bucket, create storage bucket, and you by default you can use the UiPath orchestrator, but you can also use Azure or other cloud provider storage bucket. So this how you'll use is, suppose at runtime your automation is using certain data, you want to store it in the bucket, and you want to store it in the bucket for historical purposes. After 10 days or 30 days, I want to know that what was the file which I had downloaded. So I might go to my storage bucket and get that data. So that's how it is useful. Indexes, this is also new. We'll skip that. Testing, this is suppose for each of your automations, you can create test sets. And ideally, what you should do is, once your automation is created, you should run the test cases to see that you are not, your automation is still succeeding and things like that. Okay. Settings is important, like which we saw at the folder level. We just created to manage machines, and in the tenant level, if you go, this is very important. You will see certain overall application setting for your entire organization. So suppose time zone is UTC, you might want to change this. And then certain other settings are there. So trigger, disable, these are at the overall organization level. Queues, abandoned queue items after 24 hours and so on. You won't need to change this, but you should be aware that these are part of the settings at the tenant level. Okay, robot security, scalability. One interesting aspect is non-working days. Suppose your automation, you are saying run every day, but you have a holiday, right? And you don't want your automation to run on the holiday. So you simply add your calendar here. Automatically orchestrator will see if it is a holiday, it will not run the automation, so that you don't need to individually go and stop the automation. Okay, so suppose you might have automation running from Monday to Friday, but suppose Friday is a holiday, so you will not be knowing, right, that Friday is a holiday before for every year, or you might need not to control it. So you just upload the holiday calendar, it will automatically skip the automation for that holiday. So that's important. We'll skip these parts because these are all advanced. I think, is there a question? What are mainly, okay, there Ramona has a question. What are queues mainly used for in automation? How are they different from storage bucket in storing data? Yeah, it's a good question. So queues and storage bucket both are storage mechanism, but how they are different is, see, queue you have to define a predefined structure. I created as JSON. Without creating that JSON structure, you will not be able to store items into the queue. And queues mainly I will be using at runtime for maybe pushing the item into the queue, or I gave an example, right? The example, what I did is I use the queue, I'm using the queue, and process 2, I'm using a queue-based trigger. So in process 2 is running only once the data is coming in the queue, which is pushed by process 1. So that's how I can use the queue for a queue-based trigger as well. That's how it is important. Whereas in case of a storage bucket, it can store any kind of data. And suppose I have some files getting downloaded and things like that. It is data structure which I can store. And storage bucket has a higher kind of, I can have a large amount of data being stored in the storage bucket. Queue-based trigger, when I'm using queue, the another difference is I can monitor how many transactions went fine, how many failed, and things like that. In case of storage bucket, I'll not have that options. In case of queues, I'll have granular level detail, like how many transactions processed, how many are pending. And if I want to, suppose there is one interesting aspect is I want to re-trigger or abandon or do some things, that also I can do. I don't have the time now, but if I had the time, I would have shown. You can do more granular level. I can re-trigger from a queue and things like that. Those things can also be done. So I know we are nearing the time. So let me open the floor for any questions. Because there are many things on the orchestrator. If there is something specific that you want, or if you have any questions on what I covered, you can go ahead and ask.
You can unmute yourself and ask the question. There is an option called raise your hand where you can vocally ask the questions. Feel free to use that option as well.
Okay. If there are no questions, I'll take the queue directly and maybe I'll quickly show you. But if there are questions, I'll stop. So it's up to you.
Hi, Vishal.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Basically, we have machine 1, machine 2, and machine 3, and machine 4. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
As you told, we have the process that which is upcoming next. Okay. And the machines
Mm-hmm.
are occupied previously.
Mm-hmm.
Like as you told, three machines are occupied.
Mm-hmm.
And when the other bot runs or like other process need to start in the
Mm-hmm.
same particular machine,
Mm-hmm.
as you told, for that particular time when we start that machine, it is going to for the pending status.
Correct. Correct. Yes.
Okay. If
Mm-hmm.
suppose there is a three processes, okay,
Mm-hmm.
which one starts at the 6 p.m. and second one starts at the 7 and third one starts at the 8 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the 6 p.m. process, it is occupied. Okay, it is occupied for complete three machines. It may be the example, or it
Mm-hmm.
can be occupied for the two machines as well. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But suppose if the 7 p.m. start, it is going to be the pending state. Okay. What if suppose the first machine is occupied and 7 p.m. it is showing as the pending status,
Mm-hmm.
and what the third process is going to say, it is going to be the same pending status, or how it is gonna be?
Okay, so just to understand your question, and then
Hmm.
just correct me if I'm wrong. So what you're saying is you have it's the same example I'm sharing in the Excel.
Yeah,
So basically, I have three processes. All are occupied means they are
yeah,
still run, and your my next process is suppose running at 7 p.m. But this guy is still running. It's
yeah,
not freed up the machine. So this
yeah.
is occupied. So
Hmm.
obviously, and so now if these two are empty, it will take it. But you are saying the other two are also occupied.
Yeah. If
Okay.
suppose that is the
Okay,
case.
okay, yeah, yeah, right, right. So if everything is occupied and this is using the same machine template, then it will
Mhm.
go into pending state. So suppose now
Yeah.
process one, process two which has started, it
Mhm.
is it is waiting. If it is a time-based trigger, it is supposed to run at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
But 7 p.m. the earlier process is still running. It's a long-running process. It is not completed. It is not released the license. So then it is will go into the pending state. Okay.
Yeah.
Any
Mhm.
subsequent automations which are triggered at 7 p.m. or maybe queue-based trigger or whatever, unless
Mhm.
this license is released, they will not
Mhm.
be able to run. So this will the second. So suppose process two will go in pending. Suppose process three is coming into picture, that will also go into pending. Process four and so on. Whatever processes
Mhm.
come, they'll come into pending. Then once
Mhm.
this guy gets freed, suppose this guy is now free. So now
Mhm.
suppose is your question that now which of these two will start? Is it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, okay, got it. So now mostly it is first come first serve basis, but there's one more
Mhm.
option here. So
Mhm.
for you it is for to answer in one line it is first come first serve, but there is a catch as well here. Suppose you give priority. There is a concept of priority here as well.
Yeah. On the queues.
Yeah, so queues
Mhm.
or even in automations, if you say right, if you see right,
Mhm.
if I when I run the job, uh, not
Okay.
here
For the
in the
process itself, we
ha
can.
ha, we can set a
Okay.
priority, so that
Mhm.
also comes into picture. Mostly we don't come into that we don't change it, right? But generally, if you see job priority,
Mhm.
if my process is suppose just logging or it's not important, I might give it a lowest priority. So suppose tomorrow if there is that kind of contingency or that kind of two processes coming, so the priority will come into picture. So suppose it is very I might give, see, this is so many levels of priority I can give.
Yeah.
So for a simple process which is not very important, I might give a lower priority, whereas this one I'll get higher priority. If that is not given, if by default it's, then it will be mostly first come first serve kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's a very good question. Means it's important to understand, and it's a good question. Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah.
Thanks, Ajay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Before the next question, I'll stop the recording. Sure.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.